Welcome to the All Sorts podcast. You know the home for you, the endlessly curious
The portal.
to the fascinating darkness of history and discovery.
Absolutely.
If this is your first time with us, get ready to have your mind blown because we are diving headfirst into the whispers of secrets a century old. And for a constant stream of these mind-expanding journeys, make sure you hit that subscribe button for All Sorts podcast right here on YouTube, because you really don't want to miss the incredible variety waiting in our archives, from the lost arts of navigating by the stars to the surprising science of your everyday sourdough.
And to peek even further behind the curtain of history and ignite your curiosity, join the vibrant conversation on X, Instagram, and Threads. Just search for All Sorts Podcast.
You know, it's easy to think of secret communication as, a product of our digital age where encrypted messages are zipping across the internet constantly.
Right.
But the ingenuity of keeping information hidden goes way, way back.
It really does.
Think about George Washington during the Revolutionary War, using simple numerical codes like 711, which meant the commander-in-chief himself, or even today, we have maritime signals like Oscar, Oscar, Oscar.
And it sounds so...
Which seem like ordinary words,
Right?
but they carry urgent hidden meanings like person overboard.
Oh, wow.
So throughout history, the ability to shroud information has been absolutely critical, a tool that's often shaped the course of events.
And, with very real-world consequences, sometimes life or death.
Exactly. Which brings us to the heart of today's deep dive.
Absolutely.
The veiled world of World War I. Secret code words. We've gathered a rich collection of sources for you, things like analyses of cryptographic techniques, first-hand counts from the trenches, and even declassified intelligence reports. And our mission today is to decode the ingenious methods that nations employed to keep their vital communications secret during that world-changing conflict.
World War I, it really did mark a turning point in warfare fueled by emerging technologies like the telegraph.
Yeah.
And perhaps even more significantly, the radio. These innovations allowed for unprecedented speed and reach in communication.
Right.
But of course, with that came a massive vulnerability.
Interception.
Interception, yeah.
Just imagine the sheer volume of messages flooding the airwaves. France alone is said to have intercepted over 100 million words of German radio traffic.
100 million words?
Yeah.
Well,
It's like a library of secrets potentially falling into the wrong hands.
just hanging in the air, right for the picking.
Yeah.
It's no wonder that the science and art of cryptography became absolutely essential.
Oh, absolutely.
Now, for someone like me, wading into the world of secret messages can feel a little overwhelming. But our sources help to illuminate some fundamental distinctions, right? We're talking about the difference between codes and ciphers.
Exactly.
Can you break those down for us?
Sure. Think of codes as working with larger units.
Mm-hmm.
Entire words or phrases are replaced with predetermined equivalents, like Washington's numerical system.
Okay.
That's one example.
Yeah. In WWI, the American Expeditionary Forces even used everyday words like bacon as a code for an automatic rifle.
Wow.
Trench codes during that war were a perfect illustration of this approach. Small, rapidly deployable secret vocabularies for frontline troops.
Okay.
However, their simplicity also meant they were less secure and often needed frequent changes if the enemy caught on.
So it's like having a small but constantly evolving secret language for the trenches.
Exactly, a secret lexicon,
Wow.
just for the front lines.
Okay. And then we have ciphers.
Ciphers, on the other hand, operate at the level of individual characters, letters, numbers, symbols.
Okay.
There are two main types: transposition ciphers, which scramble the order of the characters.
So think about rearranging the letters in a word.
Right.
Okay.
And substitution ciphers, where each character is replaced by another according to a specific rule.
Right.
Within substitution ciphers, you have monoalphabetic systems, where the replacement rule stays the same throughout the message, and polyalphabetic systems,
Okay.
which are much more complex.
Right.
Because the substitution rule changes as you go.
So it's not just a simple one-to-one, it's more complex.
Exactly, making them significantly harder to break.
Right.
Field ciphers in WWI often favored polyalphabetic approaches with frequently changing keys for better security on the dynamic battlefield.
Okay, let's make this a little bit more tangible. Our sources highlight the British use of the Playfair cipher.
Ah, the Playfair.
The name sounds rather lighthearted, but I doubt the code breakers on the other side felt the same way.
Not at all.
So what is it? What's elegant about the Playfair?
Well, what's elegant about the Playfair is its relatively simple method for achieving polyalphabetic substitution. It uses a 5x5 grid called a key matrix.
Yeah.
You start with a secret keyword. One source uses probabilistic world as an example.
Okay.
And you fill the grid with its unique letters going from left to right, top to bottom.
Cool.
Any repeated letters in the keyword are skipped. Since our alphabet has 26 letters, the letters I and J are usually combined into a single cell.
Okay.
The remaining empty cells are then filled with the rest of the alphabet in order.
So this keyword acts like a seed, generating a unique jumbled alphabet within the grid. How does this grid actually turn a normal message into a secret one?
Well, the message, or plain text as it's called, is first broken down into pairs of letters diagrams.
Okay.
If you end up with a single letter at the end, you usually add a filler, like X.
Okay.
To make a pair, if a pair consists of the same two letters, the second is also replaced with a filler.
Okay.
Then for each pair, you locate those two letters within your 5x5 matrix and apply one of three rules based on their position.
Okay.
If the letters are in the same row, each is replaced by the letter immediately to its right, wrapping around to the beginning of the row if you reach the end.
Okay.
If they're in the same column, each is replaced by the letter directly below it, again wrapping around to the top if needed.
Okay.
And if the two letters are in different rows and different columns, imagine the rectangle they form. Each letter is replaced by the letter in the opposite corner of that rectangle, but on the same row as the original letter.
That's quite ingenious by working with pairs of letters and their spatial relationship in the grid. It avoids a simple one-to-one substitution, which we said is much easier to crack. What about its security in practice during WWI? Our source mentions a brute force security score of 7. What does that tell us about how hard it was to break?
Well, that score of 7 gives us a relative idea of its resistance to a brute force attack, essentially trying every possible key.
Just like trying every single combination.
Exactly. In this case, it suggests that breaking a Playfair cipher by randomly guessing keys would be roughly as difficult as breaking a simple substitution cipher, where each of the 25 letters in the matrix could be replaced by any other, while the number of possible 5x5 matrices is large, 25 factorial, or 25 times 24 times 23, and so on.
Right.
It wasn't insurmountable.
Especially given the technology of the time.
Especially with the increasing sophistication of code-breaking techniques during the war.
Right.
There were indeed instances where Playfair messages were successfully decrypted.
Wow, so they were able to crack it?
They-
So, moving from the British to the French, we encounter the rather grandly named interrupted columnar transposition cipher. What's the core idea behind this method of scrambling messages?
Well, as the name suggests, this is a transposition cipher, meaning it rearranges the order of the letters of the original message, the plain text, rather than replacing them.
Okay.
It's related to the basic columnar cipher, where you write the plain text into a grid under a keyword, and then read the columns in an order determined by the alphabetical ranking of the letters in the keyword.
Okay.
The interrupted part adds a clever twist to this process.
And what makes it interrupted?
Before you even start filling the grid and reading the columns, the French introduced the use of pre-specified diagonal lines within the grid,
Okay.
both right-leaning and left-leaning. The letters that fall on these specific diagonals are extracted in a predetermined order, usually ascending based on their position in the diagonal, and form the very beginning of your encrypted message, the ciphertext. Crucially, the choice of which diagonals to use is part of the secret key, along with the keyword that dictates the column structure. After taking out the diagonal letters, you then fill the rest of the plaintext into the grid and read the remaining letters column by column according to the alphabetical order of the keyword. Just as in a regular columnar transposition, however, and this is the interruption, if a letter has already been used because it fell on one of the chosen diagonals, you simply skip it when you reach its position again while reading down the columns.
So it's like the message is being partially extracted along these hidden pathways before the main scrambling even happens. That sounds like it would throw a wrench in the works for anyone trying to put it back together. And it boasts a security score of 9, a significant jump from the Playfair, what makes it so much harder to crack.
The added complexity comes from the multiple layers of scrambling.
Right.
You not only have the keyword determining the column order, but you also have the selection and order of the diagonals to consider. And the rule about skipping already used letters, even with a relatively short keyword. The number of possible combinations for the diagonals and their order, combined with the keyword permutations, creates a much larger key space for an attacker to search through compared to the Playfair. It's that extra layer of unpredictable scrambling at the beginning that significantly increases its resilience.
Let's cross back over to the German side now and explore the turning grill cipher. This one sounds like it involves a physical object like a stencil with secret holes. Am I on the right track?
You're absolutely right. The turning grill cipher is a pure transposition cipher that relies on a physical tool, a square grill with a specific pattern of holes cut out. Typically, 1/4 of the smaller squares are missing.
Okay.
The precise arrangement of these holes is the secret key.
Okay, so you place this grill over a blank sheet of paper and write your message in the openings.
That's the first step in the encipherment process. You lay the grill on your paper and write the first part of your plain text message into the squares visible through the holes, usually going row by row. Once all the holes are filled, you unlift the grill, rotate it 90 degrees, place it back down in the same position, and write the next portion of your message into the newly revealed empty squares. This process of rotating the grill by 90 degrees and filling the holes is repeated a total of 4 times. By the end, your entire plain text message will be distributed across the underlying grid. The ciphertext is then formed by simply reading the rows of this filled grid. If the original message isn't a perfect length to fill the grid after 4 rotations, filler characters, often X, are added to the end.
So the message is effectively stamped onto the paper in 4 different orientations, each revealing a different set of writing spaces. The resulting jumble of letters must be quite disorienting. And this method also earns a security score of 9, putting it on par with the French interrupted columnar transposition, what contributes to its strength.
The security of the turning grill's cipher comes from the combination of the grill size and the specific pattern of the holes for a given size of grill. There are a vast number of possible arrangements of missing squares, furthermore, because the grill is used in 4 different rotations. The placement of each hole has a cascading effect on where other letters can end up in the final grid. Factoring in the rotational symmetry of the grill design further complicates attempts to reconstruct the original message without knowing the exact hole pattern.
Now, the Germans also deployed the ADF-GX, and later the ADF-GVX cipher. Our source describes this as a hybrid approach. What 2 techniques are being combined here?
This is a fascinating example of a cipher that blends substitution and transposition techniques. The secret key here has 2 distinct parts, a keyword used for the substitution phase and a second keyword used for the transposition phase. The substitution begins with the creation of a polybius square for ADF-GX. This was a 5x5 grid, and for the later, more advanced ADF-GVX, it was a 6x6 grid, allowing for the inclusion of the digit J and numbers 0 through 9. You fill this grid using the first keyword, writing the unique letters of the keyword first, and then the remaining letters of the alphabet or alphanumeric characters for ADF-GVX in order. The rows and columns of this grid are labeled with the letters ADF-GX or ADF-GVX.
So each letter in my original message will now be represented by a 2-letter code based on its row and column labels in this grid.
Precisely. For instance, if the letter M is located in the row labeled D and the column labeled G, it would be replaced by the intermediate ciphertext DG.
Okay.
This substitution process doubles the length of the message. The second step then takes this intermediate ciphertext and applies 1 or 2 rounds of columnar transposition, using the second keyword to determine the number of columns and the order in which they are read, just like in the basic columnar cipher we discussed earlier.
So you're essentially scrambling an already scrambled message.
Precisely.
That sounds like a very robust system, and it also achieves a security score of 9. But our source notes that even this was eventually broken by a determined French cryptanalyst. What does that tell us?
Indeed, the strength of ADF-GX and ADF-GVX came from the fact that an attacker would need to crack both the substitution and the transposition keys to recover the original message. Each of these keys on its own presented a significant challenge, however. The eventual success of Georges Painvin in breaking ADF-GVX highlights that even seemingly strong cryptographic systems can have weaknesses that can be exploited through careful analysis of patterns and frequencies in the ciphertext, especially when large volumes of intercepted messages are available. The months of intense effort it took him underscore the complexity of the cipher. The move to ADF-GVX incorporating numbers further expanded its utility for higher-level communications between headquarters.
We've delved into these fascinating battlefield ciphers, but our deep dive also touches on the crucial role of secret communication at the highest levels of diplomacy, bringing us to the infamous Zimmermann telegram. This sounds like a plot ripped straight from a historical thriller.
It really does.
What happened here?
The Zimmermann telegram is a pivotal moment in World War I history, demonstrating the profound strategic impact of cryptography.
Right.
In early 1917, with Germany on the verge of resuming unrestricted submarine warfare.
Right.
A decision they knew could provoke the United States to enter the war.
Right.
The German Foreign Secretary, Arthur Zimmermann, sent a clandestine message to the German ambassador in Mexico.
And the contents were, to put it mildly, inflammatory.
Absolutely. The core of the telegram was a proposal for a military alliance between Germany and Mexico in exchange for Mexico attacking the United States if it joined the war. Germany promised to help Mexico recover territories it had lost to the U.S. in the 19th century, Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona.
Wow.
Unsurprisingly, if this plan were to become public, it would likely galvanize American public opinion in favor of joining the Allied forces.
So absolute secrecy was paramount. This leads us to the German diplomatic code 13040. This wasn't one of the tactical ciphers we've been discussing. This was a different beast altogether.
Yeah. Yes. Diplomatic codes like 13040 operated on an entirely different level of complexity compared to the field ciphers used for tactical communication. The Zimmermann telegram was actually first encoded using German diplomatic code 0075 for transmission to the German embassy in Washington, D.C., and then re-encoded and forwarded to Mexico using the even more elaborate code 13040. Our sources describe code 13040 as an enormous code book containing over 20,000 distinct entries organized into 5 main categories, a primary vocabulary of nearly 20,000 words, grammatical instructions, proper and geographical names, common phrases, and a separate turn numeral code for representing numbers and dates.
20,000 entries.
That's huge.
That sounds less like a cipher and more like a massive prearranged dictionary of secret meanings.
Absolutely.
And the security score is a perfect 10 that implies it was virtually unbreakable by brute force.
That security score of 10 is indeed indicative of its immense theoretical strength against brute force attacks with a main vocabulary of that size. The sheer number of possible code books, the different ways those 20,000 words could be assigned code equivalents, is a factorial of that number, an astronomically large figure far exceeding the estimated number of atoms in the universe.
So in theory, this code should have been impenetrable.
In theory.
But as we know, the Zimmermann telegram did become public.
Yep.
What happened? What vulnerability was exploited?
Despite its theoretical invulnerability to brute force attacks, Code 13040, like any human-created system, had weaknesses that were ultimately exploited by British naval intelligence, the famed Room 40.
Okay.
While the precise methods they used involved painstaking analysis of intercepted messages, identifying patterns, and leveraging previous knowledge of German diplomatic practices and even earlier versions of their codes, the key takeaway is that even the most sophisticated code books can be broken through human ingenuity and relentless effort. Sometimes the very complexity of a system can inadvertently create subtle patterns that skilled cryptanalysts can detect.
And the consequences of that code being broken were truly world-altering, weren't they?
Absolutely. Once Room 40 successfully decrypted the Zimmermann telegram, the British government found themselves in a delicate position they needed to reveal the contents to the United States in a way that wouldn't expose their code-breaking capabilities.
Oh, right.
Or suggest they were intercepting American diplomatic traffic.
Wow.
Eventually, they shared the information with President Woodrow Wilson.
Okay.
The subsequent public release of the telegram ignited widespread public outrage across the United States, significantly bolstering support for entering the war on the side of the Allies, coupled with Germany's resumption of unrestricted submarine warfare. The Zimmermann telegram is widely regarded as a major catalyst for the U.S. declaration of war against Germany in April 1917. It's a powerful illustration of how the clandestine world of cryptography can directly influence the course of global history.
It's astonishing to realize that these silent battles fought with language and intellect could have such dramatic and tangible consequences on the world stage beyond these formal codes and ciphers used by militaries and diplomats. Our sources also reveal fascinating, more personal uses of secret code words during the war. Can you tell us about that?
Indeed. For instance, Allied prisoners of war held in German camps often devised incredibly resourceful ways to communicate secret messages and even request contraband supplies in their letters home, right under the watchful eyes of German censors.
Wow.
The letters of a Canadian POW named Bill Aldrich provide some remarkable examples of this ingenuity. He would subtly allude to a local Winnipeg fugitive named Jack Kravchenko, known for a daring escape to suggest his own escape attempts or plans.
That's brilliant, using a shared local reference to convey a secret meaning.
Exactly. He also cleverly employed Pig Latin, a simple children's language game where you move the first letter of a word to the end and add A to encode seemingly nonsensical phrases that his family could easily decode. And in one particularly ingenious instance, he manipulated his handwriting, subtly slanting certain words to the left to spell out a hidden request for a road map, which he asked to be cut into pieces and concealed within shipments of Quaker Oats boxes.
Oh, wow.
It really highlights the resilience and resourcefulness of these individuals in the face of confinement.
And then there's the truly remarkable story of the Native American code talkers in World War I. This is a powerful example of how a cultural heritage could become a vital strategic asset in wartime.
It is indeed a testament to the unexpected ways in which unique skills and perspectives can become invaluable, as our source from the National Museum of the United States Army points out. After experiencing repeated instances of their plain English communications being intercepted and understood by German forces, the U.S. Army recognized a critical vulnerability.
Right.
They realized that using Native American languages, many of which possessed complex structures and were largely unknown outside of their specific communities, could provide a virtually unbreakable code.
And the earliest documented use of this was by the Eastern Band Cherokee in late 1918.
That's correct. They utilized their language to transmit crucial messages for the 105th Field Artillery Battalion during the Second Battle of the Somme in the final months of the war, successfully relaying information without German interception.
Wow.
However, the most well-documented group of code talkers from World War I is the Choctaw contingent of the 142nd and 143rd Infantries. They even developed a formal code using their language to represent specific military terms. For example, the Choctaw phrase Tuska Chapota, meaning warrior soldier, was shortened to represent soldier in their code.
Okay.
They had specific terms for everything from battalions, which was twice big group, to machine guns, which was fast shooting gun, and field artillery, big gun. Their efforts were instrumental in coordinating a vital artillery attack that caught the Germans completely by surprise and significantly contributed to an Allied victory.
It's poignant to think that these languages, which were often facing suppression through policies like the Indian boarding schools aimed at assimilation, became such crucial tools in the Allied war effort.
It's really incredible.
And our source mentions that 9 different tribal languages were used in this way during World War I.
Yes, in addition to Cherokee and Choctaw languages like Cheyenne, Comanche, Ho-Chunk, Osage, and Yankton Sioux were also employed. It underscores the unique linguistic diversity within the United States at the time and the untapped strategic potential. It represented this initiative in World War I, laid the foundation for the more widely recognized Navajo code talkers of World War II, and highlights the often overlooked but vital contributions of Native Americans to the war.
Finally, our deep dive wouldn't be complete without acknowledging the incredible and often unseen work of the British code-breaking organizations like Room 40 and MI1B. These were the dedicated individuals toiling behind the lines. Tell us about them.
Absolutely. These organizations, the Admiralty's Room 40 and the War Office's MI1B, played a critical role throughout the entire war. Their focus wasn't solely on deciphering tactical battlefield communications. They were also heavily involved in monitoring high-level German and Austrian diplomatic traffic, providing invaluable intelligence on everything from enemy military intentions to espionage activities. As we've discussed, Room 40's success in intercepting and decrypting the Zimmermann telegram stands as arguably their most significant achievement. However, their contributions extended far beyond that, playing a key role in numerous other critical junctures of the war, from the early battles of the Marne to the later Ludendorff offensives and the ongoing naval and air campaigns.
And it's fascinating to learn that, contrary to some later romanticized notions, Room 40 wasn't just a matter of lucky guesses by amateurs. It was a developing field with dedicated professionals who were even experimenting with early forms of mechanized code breaking, such as the intriguing hat machine.
That's right. Figures like Dilly Knox and Nigel de Grey, who was instrumental in cracking the Zimmermann telegram and later became a pivotal figure at Bletchley Park during World War II, exemplify the expertise and unwavering dedication of these codebreakers. The pioneering work conducted in Room 40 during the First World War laid essential groundwork for the more widely known code-breaking successes of the Second World War.
As we emerge from this fascinating deep dive into the secret world of World War I code words, it's clear that these weren't just obscure historical footnotes. From the gritty reality of the trenches to the high-stakes game of international method of concealing communication played a pivotal and often surprising role in shaping the course of a world in conflict.
Indeed, reflect on those invisible battles fought not with bullets and bombs, but with language, intellect, and relentless ingenuity. It truly makes you ponder what other hidden communications throughout history might have silently shifted the course of events in ways we can only imagine. The impact of cryptography, even in these relatively early forms, serves as a powerful reminder of the enduring dance between those who seek to conceal and those who strive to uncover.
And you, our cherished listener, your own quest for knowledge. Your willingness to delve into these hidden corners is a powerful force in itself. If you found the whispers of these bygone secrets as captivating as we did, then take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to the All Sorts podcast right here on YouTube. Join our ever-expanding community of curious minds as we continue to unearth the unexpected and illuminate the fascinating knowledge. There's a rich archive of past deep dives waiting to spark your next aha moment, each one a new vista of discovery. And don't forget to follow the All Sorts podcast on X, Instagram, and Threads. Become part of our vibrant network, a collective of inquisitive spirits where the pursuit of knowledge knows no bounds until our next deep dive. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep seeking all sorts of knowledge.
All sorts.
All sorts.
All sorts.
See you next time.